Now, last year, I reviewed a 16-inch laptop from Dell that didn't break the bank, that gave you a high-res display, a 3K display, really nice build quality, and overall great looks with a discrete GPU, with a lot of the things you certainly want in a 16-inch laptop. Yes, of course, I'm talking about the Dell Inspiron 16 Plus, the 7610, one of the more popular videos on my channel. Fast forward here to 2022, I just took delivery last week of the follow-up, the 7620. Now, this is a really interesting device because they made a lot of changes here, especially under the hood. We're now looking at a Core i7-12700H, a big jump in terms of performance. And of course, you still get a 3K display, 86 watt-hour battery, and of course, the build quality and everything you'd want. It has really good port selection, upgradeability, and best of all, it won't break the bank. Hey everybody, it's Andrew, and this is my review of the Dell Inspiron 16 Plus 7620 here for 2022. Coming up. Now, before we get to the unboxing, I want to let everyone know, in the interest of transparency and full disclosure, that I'm not being paid by Dell, I'm not being sponsored by Dell. All the opinions you're about to hear are my own. Dell is not getting copy approval. That means you're seeing this video for the first time, just like you. And here's what's new with this year's version. It's now powered by the Intel Core i7-12700H, which they're claiming is 38% faster, and I saw even better numbers. Faster DDR5 4800 megahertz RAM, improved airflow, in fact 15% increase in vent area outlet, and now has Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.2, and now has a full HD webcam with a privacy shutter. That's an upgrade over last year. Redesigned keyboard, which removed the numpad, by the way, which might not be great for some people, but for others will be rejoicing. And the quad speakers here are sounding pretty good. And as far as pricing is concerned, it starts at $1,567.99. That's the unit I have here with the Core i7-12700H, the RTX 3050 Ti, although you can upgrade to the 3060 for a little bit more money, of course. 16 gigabytes of RAM. We'll talk about the upgradeability in a little bit. 512 gigabytes of SSD storage. And of course, you get that 16-inch 3K display, 3072 by 1920 on all of the models. And if you're interested in checking this out, I'll leave a link in the description below for more information and where you can buy one. And to me, the pricing is very competitive since you're getting a really premium laptop, you're getting really great port selection, and a really nice looking laptop at that. Again, we'll get into that more in this review. And with the specs and pricing out of the way, let's find out what you get inside the box. Let's open it up. You get some documentation, which includes some warranty information and a 130-watt barrel pin connection adapter. Now, of course, you could also charge via USB-C. And of course, you get the extension cord as well. And finally, you get the unit itself. Now, holding it for the first time, wow, this premium all-metal design looks great, especially in this dark green color. It looks very premium and very high-end, much more expensive than the actual price tag. And the build quality is really rock solid, very little flex, if any, in the chassis, which is good. And of course, it's pretty portable for a 16-inch laptop, although there is a little bit of heft to this, coming in at 4.51 pounds or 2.05 kilograms. And to put its size into perspective, here it is next to its smaller sibling, the Inspiron 14 Plus, the 7420. I'm going to do a separate video on this coming up next. All right, let's check out the port selection. On the left side is your power port. That's the DC in, and of course, you get some venting next to that. Now, there's an HDMI 2.0, a USB-A 3.2 Gen 1 port, and a USB-C Thunderbolt 4 port that is full function. It supports data, charge, and display out. Moving over to the right side is a 3.5mm microphone headphone combo jack. Next to that is a USB-A 3.2 Gen 1 port, and next to that is a full-size SD card reader. Now, the cards do not sit flush with the unit, although it doesn't stick out too bad. Now, one thing to be aware of, if you go with the RTX 3060, that will come with a micro SD card reader, and that will have one extra RAM slot for you to upgrade. And you get another heat vent on that right side. Now, on the back, you get some more heat vents. So you really get some good venting here. And again, that's 15% more venting area than last year's model. Now, I already opened up this laptop on my live unboxing. The replay is up on my channel. For those that didn't see it, I'll leave a link in the description below. But to get inside, there are a total of 9 Phillips head screws, 2 of which are captive. The remaining have to be removed. And once those are removed, use a guitar pick or a pry tool, as I'm doing here, to remove the bottom plate. It's that easy. And as you can see here, the bottom plate is all metal. And once you're inside, you'll notice that 86 watt-hour battery. It's the same size as the last year's model, and we'll get into the battery life in a little bit. And there are 2 fans for cooling. We'll get into the thermals as well, because the thermals are improved here. There's more venting area. In fact, 15% more venting area, which will help with the dissipation of heat. We'll get into that in a little bit. Now, as far as the RAM is concerned, there is now faster RAM being employed here. It's DDR5 4800. Faster RAM than last year, which was DDR4 3200 megahertz, and that's a nice big difference. But what's interesting is the review unit, the model that Dell sent over, has 16 gigabytes of this RAM, but there's one 8 gigabyte stick that's available to the user, and then 8 gigabytes are soldered into the motherboard. But if you go over to the 16 gigabyte option or the 32 with the 2 other options, as you see here, those will have 2 SODIMM slots that are upgradable by the user. In other words, those are running in dual channel mode. And to show you the difference from last year, here it is next to the 7610, and there you see the 2 SODIMM slots that one has. Now, you can get those 2 same SODIMM slots here in this year's version, again, if you go with those 2 upper-end models, but with the one that they sent over for around $1,560, this is the one you can go with. Of course, that is a premium. You're going to pay $200 more, and that would also get you more storage as well. Now, the good news is regarding the SSD, that is slotted in. That means as the user, you can expand it out later on. If you want to get more storage, you have that option. Now, as we know, this chipset does support PCIe Gen 4 storage, but the speeds we're seeing here are akin to Gen 3, just so you know. But it does support Gen 4 if you want to add it in later on. And we now have Wi-Fi 6E along with Bluetooth 5.2. And the good news is it's slotted in. That means if we want to change it out down the road, we have that option. And both the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth have been working flawlessly so far. And the overall situation as far as upgradability, pretty good. Not something we normally see here in 2022. I'm happy to report that. Now, when it comes to the display, there is one option, and it's a good option. We're looking at a 16-inch 3K display, a resolution of 3072 by 1920. And yes, for those wondering, that is a 16:10 aspect ratio. It has an anti-glare coating. It's a non-touch display that Dell claims will get as bright as 300 nits. I actually measured above that. I got 312 nits, even better, but I would like to see it above 400 nits. That's not what we get here, but it's above my 300 nit threshold. Now, as far as the display itself is concerned, you get the really deep blacks, the vibrant colors, the good contrast, the good white point, and you also get a pretty low Delta E score of 1.21, making it a color accurate display. It also has decent coverage of the color gamut: 100% sRGB, 73% Adobe RGB, 73% of the DCI-P3 wide color gamut, and 68% NTSC, making this a decent choice if you do color grading, Lightroom, Photoshop, and of course, video editing. Now, it's also a matte display, so you don't get any unnecessary glare or reflections, which you gotta love. It's a comfort view display with really good viewing angles as well, so it's been pretty good. It's also got a pretty stiff hinge, so you don't get any screen wobble, or hardly any screen wobble, I should say, so looking good in that regard as well. And as far as watching Netflix, Amazon, YouTube, it's all been great watching movies, but of course, since this is a 16:10 aspect ratio, you'll get slight black bars on the top and the bottom, although I'll trade that any day, because with a 16:10 aspect ratio, you'll see more on the display. You'll do less scrolling when it comes to web browsing, as opposed to something like a 16:9 aspect ratio. And here it is next to its smaller sibling, the Inspiron 14 Plus 7420, and that review will be dropping this week as well. That one also has a really nice high-res display. It also has a lot of the same characteristics, same CPU, and an interesting choice in terms of the discrete GPU, the RTX 3050, as opposed to the 3050 Ti I have in this model here today. We're going to get into it in that review. That will be dropping very soon. So this is the camera on the brand new Dell Inspiron 16 Plus, the 7620 here for 2022. A lot of improvements on this laptop we are going to go over in this video, of course, but one of those improvements is the camera. So this is now a 1080p full HD camera, up from the HD or 720p we got last year. And pretty good in terms of the build quality. What do you think about the microphone quality in terms of the audio? Let me know. Now, there is a shutter switch on the camera that allows you to turn it off for more security and privacy. The power button doubles as a fingerprint scanner. That's worked well for Windows Hello login. But the camera itself is not an IR camera, so there's no face recognition for Windows Hello. So you'll have to use the fingerprint scanner for the Windows Hello feature. But overall, what do you think about this for your Zoom calls, for your work from home needs? Let me know in that comment section below. And here you could see next to its predecessor, which had a 720p webcam, this 1080p webcam I think is a big improvement in terms of the clarity, the picture, and I think the microphones are also improved as well. So a much better video conferencing device than last year, especially when we're working from home. A lot of hybrid working needs are here, and this definitely will be a much better laptop than last year in that regard. And for those wondering, yes, you can open the lid with one finger. Good job on terms of the hinges. Now, let's talk about the keyboard. There's a big change here. As you'll notice here, there is no longer a numpad. We got that in the 7610, not here in the 7620. And by removing the numpad, it centers the touchpad, so it's no longer off to the left. But it also removes the numpad, which a lot of number crunchers will certainly miss, that's for sure. And as far as the keyboard itself is concerned, decent key travel, good tactility, a little bit on the mushy side, but really overall, a very pleasant typing experience. Not too bad. Now, it also has a multi-stage backlight that allows you to get work done in a dark room or a dimly lit environment. And it has a pretty nicely sized precision touchpad. And it worked well. Two-finger scrolling was buttery smooth. All the gestures work as you'd expect. And as I mentioned earlier, this is running the Intel Core i7-12700H. And as you can see from these numbers, multi-core performance, single-core performance were both very good. And that's a big jump over the 11th gen processor we found in last year's model. Now, this chipset has 14 cores. That's 8 efficiency cores and 6 performance cores to boost up the performance. And they did a great job in terms of the thermals, as I detected very little, if any, thermal throttling when I ran the Cinebench R23 extended test, which really will test for thermal throttling and take that into account. Good multi-core and single-core performance here. And it did really well in the PC Mark X, which is a good indicator of everyday use, doing Microsoft Office, email, web browsing, video conferencing, watching movies, Netflix, Amazon, YouTube, has been flawless on this device. And as I mentioned earlier, this has the RTX 3050 Ti discrete GPU, but you can opt for the 3060, but of course that's capped at 60 watts. Now, this RTX 3050 Ti is no slouch in its own right. You'll be able to do some gaming on this, although this is not really a gaming laptop per se, but if you change the settings around here and there, you'll get some really nice playable frame rates on some of the more popular titles, as you see here. And when I ran the Prime 95 stress test to see if this will thermal throttle under heavy load, it would reach a maximum core temperature of 86 degrees, and then it would lower down to anywhere between 69-70 degrees Celsius, maintaining a cooler temperature, but seeing very little thermal throttling because it has some really nice venting. In fact, like I mentioned earlier, that 15% more venting space certainly helps here. And when it comes to the surface temperatures, it remained relatively cool with a couple of hot spots here and there, as you see here on my thermal imaging camera here. So not really bad. You can use this on your lap. It never got overly hot to the touch, which is really good. It remained relatively cool. And the Power Manager allows you to change the different profiles. You could find that within the My Dell app, and you have the cool, the optimized, the quiet, and the ultra performance mode. That's the one that will have the most fan noise, averaging anywhere between 48 and 50 decibels, which is noticeable but not overly loud. Pretty good. And of course, the quiet mode, it does exactly what it says. It kept it really quiet. And as I mentioned earlier, this has an 86 watt-hour battery, a pretty decent size for a 16-inch laptop, and it did really well in my continuous web surfing test over Wi-Fi at 150 nits, going 11 hours and 32 minutes on that test, which means in real-world mixed usage, you're looking at anywhere from 8 to 9 hours, maybe even more, depending on what you're doing. But please keep in mind, everybody's use case is a little bit different, so your mileage may vary, but a decent number nonetheless. Now, the included 130-watt power adapter charges pretty fast, giving you a full charge in about an hour and 40 minutes. Not too bad. Now, this unit sports quad speakers, and I thought the sound was pretty good. The volume was really good, the mids were decent, and there was some bass. Pretty nicely done here for a 16-inch laptop. Now, to get an example of this, let's check out Epidemic Sound. And if you want to save 10% off Epidemic Sound, see the link in the description below. But in the meantime, let's check out the sound on this laptop.
Life is what you make it. I feel like amazing. I can't see a way out. I've been stacking face down off canvases I painted.
All right, folks, let's bring it all home. What do I think about the Dell Inspiron 16 Plus 7620 here in 2022? Now, there's a lot of improvement here, especially when it comes to the performance, thanks to that Core i7-12700H, a big jump in both multi-core and single-core performance over last year's model, which is really good in terms of the performance here in 2022. Now, I like the battery life with its 86 watt-hour battery, scoring over 11 and a half hours on my continuous web surfing test. You're looking at anywhere from 8 to 9 hours in real world mixed usage, but of course, everybody's use case is a little bit different, so your results may vary. And of course, the discrete GPU, the RTX 3050 Ti, is not going to blow you away in terms of the overall numbers, but it gave you a nice boost in terms of the graphics performance, allowing you to not only game, but to do video editing, including 4K video editing on this laptop. Not too bad. But of course, you could always bump up to the 3060, but that's capped at 60 watts. And I'm not sure if it's worth the extra money. That's up to you, because the 3050 Ti was no slouch in its own right. And I thought the build quality was very good on this, very little flex or give in the chassis, and I like the dark green color. It gives it a nice, sleek, and modern look. It has a really great port selection, and I like the fact that you can upgrade not only the RAM, the SSD, but also the Wi-Fi. It hits the trifecta in terms of upgradability, although the one I have here has 8 gigabytes of RAM soldered in with one open slot. The other models offered by Dell have the 2 open slots. Keep that in mind. Now, one thing to note, of course, your number crunchers, accountants are not going to be happy they removed the numpad this time around. So some of you are going to be happy about that choice, since it does center off the touchpad and gives you a little bit more comfortable room to type on, although those number crunchers and spreadsheet users are not going to be happy, as I mentioned. It's pretty much a 50-50 camp, one way or the other. But I think Dell made all the right moves here. Great upgradability, great port selection, nice 3K display, and really great performance out of that 12th gen processor with the RTX 3050 Ti. Throw in some pretty good battery life, really nice build quality, and a nice dark green color to top it off. I have no hesitation recommending the Dell Inspiron 16 Plus here in 2022, and it certainly won't break the bank. So what do you think about this bad boy, the Inspiron 16 Plus? Now, this is an all-metal design. This is the dark green finish. Really nice, actually, in terms of the looks. Like I said, very good build quality. 16-inch display, 3K display, 3072 by 1920. Great port selection, although you will not get this full SD card reader if you go with the higher end options. Of course, they needed the room for the extra SODIMM slot for your RAM. This one does have the SD card reader, really nice. Now, the big jump here is going to be the performance. We now have a Core i7-12700H. That's a big jump over the 11th gen processor. RTX 3050 Ti. Really decent performance out of that. You can certainly game on this. It's not a gaming laptop, as I mentioned, but certain settings can be had here, and certain playable frame rates certainly can be played on this. Not a problem. 4K video editing you can do on this as well. So that having that 3050 Ti certainly gives you a performance boost. Now, when it comes to the 3060, the thing to keep in mind, that one's capped at 60 watts, so you're not getting the full power of that 3060 like we see in other laptops, but it certainly will be even more of a performance boost over the one we have in here. Now, as far as the battery life, 86 watt-hour battery, 11 hours and 32 minutes on my test. About 8 to 9 hours of mixed use in my estimation here. So you really are getting decent battery life out of this, which is a little bit of an anomaly because we haven't been seeing great battery life out of these Intel Alder Lake processors so far. But this is pretty good. So I'm curious to know what you think. Let me know in the comments section below. Now, the review unit sent over by Dell retails for about $1,560 or so. Check out the link for the latest pricing in the description below. Now, of course, if you bump up to the RTX 3060, you double the amount of storage as well, and you get the 2 SODIMM slots for the RAM, running in dual channel mode, of course, so it's something to bear in mind. The review unit I have here has 8 gigabytes soldered in with 1 open slot to the user, something to be aware of. But overall, I think it's a really good price to performance ratio, great expandability, great port selection, and of course that 3K display with some pretty decent battery life. How can you go wrong? So please hit the like button, please subscribe, please share this video. Don't forget to leave a comment in that comment section below. Let me know how I'm doing. Let me know if there's a device or something out there you think I should review. I'll do my best to try to make that happen. Don't forget to check me out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, my website, amdtechreviews.com. So until next time, this is Andrew from AMD Tech. See ya.